So I'll set the background. I'll set the stage for today's webinar. Uganda's Data Protection and Privacy Act was enacted in 2019, and it aims to protect the privacy of the individual and of personal data by regulating the collection and processing of personal information. It also aims to provide for the rights of the persons whose data is collected, provide for the obligation of data controllers, data processors, and data collectors, and also regulate the use or disclosure of personal information. In line with the above, the Personal Data Protection Office in Uganda was established to oversee the implementation of and be responsible for the enforcement of the Data Protection and Privacy Act 2019. Now, one of the functions of the office is to formulate, implement, and oversee programs intended to raise awareness about the Act. We all know that over the last few months, the Personal Data Protection Office has embarked on registration of data collectors, data processors, and data controllers. And many organizations that have registered with the office have been asking, okay, we've registered with the office, what next? Is this the only thing we need to do to comply with the Data Protection and Privacy Act? The short answer is no. There is more to compliance beyond registration with the office, because we know that registration is just the first step. And so as an office, we've organized this webinar on compliance with the Act beyond registration with the office. Today, our presenter for the webinar will be Mr. Becca Birukuja, who is the Manager, Legal and Licensing Affairs at the Personal Data Protection Office. Becca, you're very welcome. You can turn on your video. And a few rules of engagement for our participants. Please do put your questions in the Q&A section of the webinar. And if you have any comments, you can put those in the chat to keep the conversation going. And then remember to follow us on Twitter, PDPO, UG, and also on LinkedIn, Personal Data Protection Office. And we'll be happy to have you there to continue the conversation from there. Becca, please, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Angela. Good morning to you all, and thank you for making time. About my video, I may be unable to activate it. I don't have enough lighting where I am, but at least my picture can be seen. That is my true likeness. Okay, so we'll proceed. Most of you on the call, or literally all of you registered as required. We've issued you the certificate, but now the question is what next? The other part is when someone you've registered with the Personal Data Protection Office, you're required to submit an annual compliance report. The regulation, if I can share my screen. Under Regulation 50 requires every data collector, processor, and controller registered within 90 days at the end of every financial year to submit to the office a summary of those areas. Now, this financial year is that of government. This is guided by the NITAYO Act, which says government financial year ends in June. So when they talk about that you should have submitted your annual compliance report within 90 days, those 90 days of any given year, it's within July to September. It is not March, the calendar financial year, or what other entities use, but that is within that period as stated. So the other question is, which we've been receiving, what should be the template of the report? You know, people have been wondering. Well, we prepared the template that I'm going to briefly go through. What we'll be using in completing the annual compliance report. So the way this presentation is going to be done, it's going to be slightly different from the usual of having PPTs. It's going to be looking at the actual documents and just highlighting the areas. So this is what it will look like. I've used this as a placeholder that July, so it will have the name of the entity. For discussion purposes, we're going to use XYZ Uganda Limited. So annual compliance report submitted to PDPO, and then the month. So giving the background. Now within the regulations, 2 areas are highlighted which you're supposed to talk about within the report. That is the complaints that you've received, the state at which they act, and also the breaches. But within this preamble or background, we've gone ahead to say that the law requires us, specifically under regulation 4B, highlight it, that we coordinate, supervise, and monitor data collectors and processors. So based on that, we've expanded, what should be in the report to enable you adhere with all the other areas of the Data Protection and Privacy Act. So these are some of the sections which you'll be providing information on, starting with the registration. So you let us know when you were initially registered, and then your status at the time of submission of the report. So whether your renewal is upcoming or it's expired. Now renewal for it, it's different from the period within which the report should be filed, in the sense that if you are registered in November, remember the certificate runs for 12 months. So this should be at within the 12th mark of anniversary of that when the registration was initially done. Note that whenever it's December or whenever it's July, that is when your certificate would have expired. No, it's the 12 months from the time when you are registered or entered into the data protection register. But then I should remind you that the law requires that you start on your renewal processes at least to be done within 3 months to the expiry date. So you'll be providing that information. Now also, the law requires that when you're registered, you should notify us within 14 days of any changes in the registered particulars. So within the report, equally, you go ahead and let us know which areas you've changed, whether you've changed the place of address, your nature of business, and all the other areas that you had indicated in the original registration. Then there is an area on leadership and oversight. So you let us know still within the organogram of the institution specifically speaking to, where the data protection officer lies. So you tell us this person reports to, here's an example, director, audit and assurance. And if they have other members of the team that they work with, you need not provide their individual names, what we're interested in, and the titles. Also within the report, you'll be giving us some information. It may be historical, but what we're most interested in if there's been a review. So these are the policies, the 3 policies that we'd like to know about. 1, the data protection and privacy policy, when it was approved by management, and if it has been reviewed, and the date of that review, rather review. Then information security, and then records management. Now the names could differ, but as long as it's speaking to, to the spirit of data protection and privacy, information security, some people call records management or data retention, that is what we're interested in. And then training and awareness. Now this is twofold. You'll be giving us an update on the training and awareness, which has been undertaken by the data protection officer, and it will be written in such a way you tell us the title of the training, the date, and whether it was physical or online of the DPO. We will also be looking at the training or awareness on, data protection specifically of the staff. Now, still, this is just for discussion purposes. We've given a company XYZ, which has these different units. So you should let us know that within this particular unit, so many people are within that unit, but these are the people who undertook the training and then the percentage. But even before you get to this percentage, as an organization, you should have within your targets as the data protection officer, the percentage at which you would have created awareness and trained the staff. So let's say your target was 85%, the entire organization. Then you go ahead and give us the breakdown, which the total will definitely culminate in that performance as of measured against the target. Then the other one will be on complaints. Now for complaints, the law requires that you're supposed to resolve complaints within a particular period of time, because complaints speak to various forms. There is Form 9, and then Form 9, 11, and I think 7. So, but when you're reporting here, you can amalgamate and just tell us those that have been resolved. You give us a number, those are pending resolution, and then the total complaints resolved. But here you also need to give us the most frequent complaint received and what it was about. Here we said the most frequent complaint received was in relation to clients requesting for options on how to unsubscribe from the organization's marketing messages. And you also give us of those, of that particular area, how many were they? So here we said there were 50. And you go ahead and highlight how many of those have been resolved at the time of reporting. So about data security breaches, so here you still give us, still in generality, the breaches which have been recorded. Now, as you're aware, the law requires if you become aware of any data security breach, you should immediately report it to the Personal Data Protection Office. Now you give us those that have been reported, what the common cause was, those that have been resolved, equally what the common cause was, and generally something to that effect. Still, you let us know the most frequent cause of the breach, and you can let us further, indicate whether it resulted in a loss of records, so many records, and if any money was lost, or the effect that it had on the data subjects from whom you collected this information. Now, the other area, this one will just be applicable. It's for data protection impact assessment. Now, within the regulations, this is something which was adopted from international practice, that if you're to conduct, processing that may result into a high risk to the rights and freedoms of the individuals from whom you collect the information, then you're required to conduct a data protection impact assessment. So this assessment really is to speak to, establishing what the risk could be in case they can be resolved and which controls you should put in place, speaking into what we call later on data protection by design and default. So for this, it could be if you're starting out a new project, possibly where we'll be collecting information as opposed to your usual collection methods. Or it could be you've designed a new system which individuals will be using to contact you, from which you'll be collecting their information or doing analysis or generally going online something. But this is not only about services which are going online, it's merely about this collection that may result in the high risk to the privacy of the individuals. So here you let us know which activity that was and when this data protection and impact assessment was concluded. Of course, it goes without saying that it should have been documented and kept on record. But this, we are aware some entities, most especially the small scale, may not interface with such scenarios. That's why we've added the word, if applicable. If it is not, then you give a reason without, rather you need to give a reason than just leaving it blank. We say it's because maybe we didn't have any processes, and we are not processing information on a large scale, which is categorized as special personal data, something to that effect. So the other area is the data protection and privacy audits. Now, as you may be aware, the law requires every data protection officer, to conduct assessments or audits to establish the level of compliance with the law. Now, these audits are not just about the law. because we have policies, ones that we've just talked about, so they should speak to that, you know, to establish the level of compliance of your organization. But then there are some audits which could be external. We come up with annual audit plans. So this is already work in progress. We've written to some organizations, alerting them of what we need. We're engaging them. Some we've already done the on-site audits. So where that happens, you indicate in the report if the DPO conducted one, or if they had an external one. It doesn't necessarily have to be from the regulator. It could also be an external auditor. So you indicate that as well. You also should indicate the percentage of implementation of the recommendations. Of course, when you conduct an audit, if you establish any gaps, then recommendations are made, and we speak to a remedial action plan or a follow-up plan saying, okay, this is a gap, it will be bridged within this period of time by this particular person. So that's why we need those percentages. Lastly, this report will have a conclusion that you list the major takeaways as an organization. As the DPO, have you had any challenges in ensuring compliance with the law? What were the wins? Generally, what you can say more of, like your thoughts, things that you'd want us to know as the regulator. But simply put, this can also act as a suggestion box to us. Maybe you let us know, okay, maybe this can be done in a certain way. So we'll be using that as another mode of communication to us. So that's it about this annual compliance report. Then now we'll go to the other area, which is maybe, Angela, can we take the questions now, or I can go to the next part of the presentation? Angela, are you there? Okay, I guess what you'll do, you'll just note your questions and we'll take them up at once. Now, the other area, as you know, with the registration, you give us information, which largely, you know, we did not authenticate. You told us to keep information for this long. You transfer information to these countries. Then, actually, let me share my screen. So you completed forms 2 and 3. Now, the bulk of you use the offline process of, completing the form and you upload. It has been automated. So, but within those forms too, you are just giving us the information, especially around which information you collect and the purpose for which you use it, whom you may disclose it to, and your security measures. Now, we need to go further beyond that, because that, it was really to help you understand the principles of data protection, largely around, transparency and all the others. So the next step would be embedding, if you haven't already done that, embedding these principles within your data processing operations. So if you already have a structure whereby you have you have information security people, you have the policies, you have the privacy notices. Now, this is the point at which you're supposed to review them. Of course, the law is there. You've had the law, you've read it, you followed it when you're registering, but we thought it wise that if we tell you what our expectations are in regard to those specific principles and areas of compliance, then it will make it easier for you. But even then, with this tool that we've developed, it's what we use to conduct audits in case you're part of our annual audit plan. But then, it's something that you can also use as the DPO to conduct the assessments and internal audits. So it's advisable that what I'm going to share, you go ahead and conduct the audits and you keep the results on file. In case later on you form part of our audit plan, when we come in, it will be, easy for you to know what we're looking for, what to prepare, and then where the gaps are and improving on them. But also, within the law, as you know, sometimes you may have all the controls in place, but still, maybe due to human error or factors beyond your control, there is a data security breach. The law gives you a defense that if you've done everything as required, but still something out of your control happened, you know, that can be used as a proper defense. As you where the penalties for non-compliance, there is imprisonment and a fine of up to 2% of the institution's annual gross turnover. So this Excel sheet now will help you, you know, whether we've come in to audit you or not, you should go ahead and use it so that now you know exactly what we want. As you see there, it has a number of areas. It has what our expectations are, ways you can meet those expectations, and then having a response, and then an action on or evidence. So now in regard to leadership, you know, you indicated you have a DPO now, but some of you, you know, when you come in to do an audit, this is what we ask. But now on your end, if we haven't come in, you can use this to correct the processes. One, was there a formal communication of this DPO being formally appointed? Because when you're appointed as the DPO, people should know who you are. Remember, you're to help them. You sort of act like the mini regulator, you represent us within the organization. So you interest yourself and find out if your job description has been updated to speak to the responsibilities of a DPO as stipulated by Regulation 47 of the regulations. Then ask HR or whoever sends the email to communicate to staff. This person has been appointed, you can deal with them. But then also most importantly, you know, have a training and development plan, something to speak to that. Yes, we conduct these monthly webinars and we have other presentations, but also interest your organization to have a training and development plan in place for you and the people that you work with. Then, of course, when you come in, we'll ask the people that you work with, information security in case it's another person, records management, remember to advise them. So to make sure that, you know, everything is in place or they are following what is required of them. Now, the other question that we've been receiving a lot is how to develop a data protection and privacy policy. Now, a policy, as you may be aware, it's something that is internally looking. So it's just telling, you know, people, but before I even get to that, now the position that we've taken as Uganda's regulator to avoid confusion is that a policy, a data protection and privacy policy, is one that is developed for the organization. But the one that you give to people, your customers, clients, suppliers, letting them know how you handle information, that one will be calling it a privacy notice. So a privacy policy, when you talk of a policy, it is an internal document. So of course, it should have the definitions, the scope being, of course, who it applies to, employees and also contractors and vendors that act on your behalf, and then also covering aspects of data protection, records management, and information security. Now, in this conversation, at least you might have already observed that when you talk of data protection, it's usually followed by these other areas, records management and information security. Now, these could be more comprehensive. So if you already have those in place, you know, you just ensure that aspects of data protection added to make it more comprehensive. So we've also had instances where, you know, you ask someone for an information security policy, then they just give you a data protection policy. No, those two should be different, because an information security policy is more encompassing, you know, your entire information assets, not just those of personal data. So within the policy, you know, you can talk about these and provide links to those other policies in case you have them and procedures. And then a policy statement talking about what your stand is as the organization. But one of the most critical areas is this data protection policy principles rather, and the data subject rights. Now, your employees should be aware that they are collecting this information on behalf of the organization, but they are accountable to the individuals from whom you collect the information. So this policy should have people's specific roles in regard to ensuring the principles adhere to, and then also you enable the citizens, or rather the individuals, exercise their rights. So I'll give an example. So let's say you are in, let me use NITA. NITA provides services to government. So there are people who develop websites. So these ones people should know, okay, if you're developing a website, you're developing a system, you should be aware of privacy by design and default. This is how you should ensure that, of course, if it's a system, you should only collect minimal information required to provide that service. Then if you work in a call center, make sure that if a person raises a complaint, and then this information should be probably kept within a system that everyone doesn't have control. So if someone works in legal and they're in charge of drafting contracts, they should ensure that actually, if the information is to be kept in another country, they've done an assessment, or they should have provisions on ensuring that whoever they're giving the information, they cannot subcontract without your authorization. So the policy should speak to that, so that when you come to the staff and tell them about it, it actually is relevant to them, amongst other areas. But then it's also critical to have an area on reporting data security breaches. People should know who to report to. As you're aware, the law requires this notification to be done immediately. So if someone is working in a department that's holding personal data, and they think, or probably not even think, they could be busy and say, I'll notify the DPO in a month, the institution will be penalized. So that should be captured. Of course, people make it easy, should have the phone number, an email address, and they know exactly who to approach. Awareness is very key. General awareness, but also the specialized roles. Then I should have an area of compliance. People should know, using the internal disciplinary sanctions. If you fail to comply, this is what will happen to you. I've already talked about the contact information, and should definitely be reviewed and approved by management. So the other is training. Of course, training, there is, in case you have new staff, they should be told about data protection. Then refresher training is done, possibly through staff meetings. Then for the specialized roles, those that handle personal data on a daily basis. And then should have an aspect of monitoring. When this training is done, you should have surveys to check if people have understood, if there are some areas which need to be improved. But also, most importantly, as the DPO, keep records of this training, the content of the training, who attended, and things of that sort. Now, when we come in to do an audit or later on, and then we find that possibly, the record of the particular training wasn't kept. And then when we talk to people, they do not appreciate, even if at all they even remember, that will be an issue. So it's not a matter of people just either logging into an online platform or a physical engagement. Please make sure that there is a bit of monitoring. Surveys are conducted. That way it can help you as the DPO to know who needs further training, but even more so on our end when we come in to audit or find out, to be able to gauge the level of awareness, because this is not a tick box activity. Then the other area is about, the rights. Remember, data protection and privacy is about the individual. As the office, we are ensuring that as an individual, their rights are upheld, but even you, the person who is collecting, or if you are an organization, you observe these rights. So be interesting, or rather this particular compliance tool, we've highlighted some of the key rights. If someone is making a request, they would like to access their information, correcting it, erasing it, and preventing direct marketing purposes and complaints. So have these mechanisms in place. Within your policies, there should be a well-documented procedure on how to deal with this particular one from the various departments. If the people calling through a call center, walk-in, use a form, this should be well catered for. Of course, as you're aware, when people complain, this is tied to particular timelines within the law. Then I should also add, within your documentation of complaints, you need to add and inform individuals that in case they feel that they are dissatisfied with the way you've handled their complaints or the way you've attended to them, they have the right to complain to the regulator, being the Personal Data Protection Office. This should be stated in your policy, in your for the employees to know, your contractors and vendors, but also your privacy notice. Now, the other area where we've been receiving so many questions is how do I develop a privacy notice? Remember, the terminology, what we've standardized is that a notice is one that is outward facing to the people from whom you're collecting the information. So Section 13 of the Act gives which information should be provided and other separate sections, but at least we made it easy on how you can meet our expectations, telling people the contact details of the organization and the DPO's contact. Now, the DPO's contact, here we advise you, to put a general line. And if you can have a DPO email address that's sort of a bit dpo@nita.go.ug, that would be ideal. This will enable people know that they can be able to contact you, without necessarily going through info, customer care. But then it can also help you, at least preserve your privacy, not to have people who are marketing bombarding you with knowing that Becca is the DPO of this institution and, they misuse that. So if you can have an email address speaking to that, it would help you. It would also talk about, which information you collect and all the other details. This will be able to guide you. So use this to review your notices. In case they are not up to par, then you can revise them. But in case they are, then that's good to go. You can just keep it as a record. Data sharing is another key area. Data sharing is key. It's required either to ensure that you're giving services to the right person, to understand your customers, if you're government, to enable you implement your mandate. So, but the law is very clear that before you share any information with any other person, what we technically call a data processor, you should have a contract. Now, this contract, we've gone ahead and guided you on what it should have. So if it's not a separate contract, and let's say it's a contract that has other provisions, find a way of at least adding a section on data sharing that at least speaks to some of these areas. Of course, let me just highlight some of the things in case the data processor is to subcontract, they shouldn't share this information without the authorization of the data controller. And then the responsibilities, because remember, you're still the principal. That information which has been shared with them, in case they experience a data security breach, mandate them within this documentation to immediately inform you. That way, it will enable you to also notify us as required by the law, amongst others. Then the last area is records management. This one, most institutions, at least they have ways, of handling records. And this is beyond, like I pointed out, personal data. Of course, you have things that speak to how to create, locate, and retrieve records. This also enables you, facilitate the exercise of the rights, because the law requires that I can walk up to you to confirm if you have my information. And if you do have it, then you tell me, okay, how long you've kept it, what you use it for, with whom you've shared it with. So if you have this policy and procedures, it can help you do this within the period required by the law. Data quality, how to update information and related aspects. Some people use standards around the 9000, ISO 9000 about data quality and documentation. So if you already have that, it's an easy way, of enabling the data subjects, exercise their right of rectification, but also speaking to this particular policy. And then also retention. As you may be aware, retention is guided by one, the purpose that you stated in your notice, or if you're required by law and the law requires you to keep this information for a particular period of time, and related aspects. So you should have possibly a table that speaks to how long you keep that information within that particular policy. This section is the last one. So if you no longer use the information, this is beyond electronic information. You find in some organizations, they printed information contracts that have personal data and they're left lying around. Or, which is also very common, most organizations have security companies which they've outsourced to. So when someone is driving in, walking in, they'll ask for information. Okay, what is your name? Who are you going to see? What's your phone number? Sometimes they ask for identification. As data protection officers, when we usually go to organizations, we ask them, okay, how long do you keep these visitors' books? Most of them, they have no idea where they've been kept, whether these security agencies just go away with these books. Remember, they have personal data. Have a policy that speaks to these various sets of information. So in case at the end of the day, do these guards stay with the book? Are they kept with the administration department? So in case it's filled up, the purpose was to be able either to know in case something was lost or they need to follow up with the visitor, determine how long you keep it, and it should be well documented amongst others. So basically that's it. These two documents, one, the template of the report, and then also this Excel sheet will be shared with people that you registered as the data protection officers, and then they'll use them, as we've guided to do the assessment and also generally review your policies, your procedures, and all that. I end my presentation. Now we can take questions. Thank you.
Becca, thank you very much. There's a couple of questions for you online. I don't know if you'd submit through the questions or if you'd like to respond to the questions on your own.
Oh, thank you, Angela. I'll start with these ones in the Q&A.
Okay.
Actually, if you can use Q&A, it's a lot better to follow through than chats. Okay, on section 2.1, isn't it crazy for us to provide you with information you already have on the portal, e.g. date my company registered when it expires? Okay, now this, for now, it's already there, but now this is the report, because this report, it can help put all the information in one place. So if it's already there, I would want to believe it would be easy for you to copy and paste. It would be more really like a paragraph, not even a paragraph, a line. Then do the trainings or awareness sessions conducted by NITAU count? Definitely they do. Just a minute. Okay. Definitely they do. Then what happens when an entity registers within July and September, yet it's the same period, the annual report is needed? Well, that's what the law says, you're ideally supposed to submit it. So if you registered within that period of time, you should submit the report with whichever information that you have. Then also same principle on section 4, these policies are submitted already on the portal. Now, not everyone submitted policies. And of course, at the time when you are submitting, what we are most interested in at the time, it was the information security policy. So within the submission, rather annual report, you're not submitting the policy, no. You're just letting us know when it was approved and in case it has been reviewed. So there is no, by the way, when you're submitting your annual report, please do not attach any policies, procedures, no. We just need information. Please clarify if data protection impact assessment is similar to data privacy impact assessment. Yes, it's the same, but our law calls it, it's called a data protection impact assessment. So it's really the same. It's about risks and how to come up with ways of addressing them. On section 8, the law and regulations do not require us to submit the data protection impact assessment to the PDPO. kindly clarify. No, you need not. That is something that you just keep on your record. You know, it's really to inform your processing operations. Then on section 8, okay, I'm done with that. We have many complaints that come through in the customer care section. Do all these have to come through in this report? Only major ones? Not major ones, as long as they are complaints related to personal data, you're supposed to indicate them. Remember, within the report, you're just giving us numbers and only highlighting the most frequent one. So this is not just about major ones. So if you had 100 of them, please indicate them as received. Is this a requirement for an audit? Is this requirement for an audit mandatory, or it is only for internal health check? Well, it's not mandatory, but we encourage you to conduct it because we are increasing on the number of organizations to audit according to our annual audit plan. So if you already have one, it will make the conversation a lot easier for you. But then also in case there is a breach or we come in and investigate, now, of course, when you come into the investigations, we use a different tone. So if you have these things on the books, you as the DPO and the organization, it will make it easier. It's not mandatory, but very much encouraged. Is it allowed for us to invite PDPO to undertake an audit on our company? Would this be at a cost? You can invite us and we see if we can include you on our annual audit compliance list for the next financial year. About whether it's this one, I'm not at liberty to answer whether yes or no, but the ones which are part of the annual audit compliance plan, those ones are free of charge because, you know, they form part of a report that we eventually submit to cabinet. So those ones are free of charge. Okay, has the office specified persons or bodies that are mandated to appoint DPOs? The regulation seems to suggest that this is not mandatory. You're right, it's not mandatory, but we advise that at least we have a person in charge of compliance. We'll gazette that guidance, but we are really at pains, you know, to register a company that doesn't have a DPO. A DPO doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, someone appointed out of the organization. No, at least have a person in charge of compliance, because when we come in to interact with you, at least there should be a person that we can start with. So it's encouraged that you have one. Another question, do you intend to be auditing the different systems and principles for implementing and managing data privacy and protection that have been put in place by different organizations? Because this would be important in assessing, I believe that was supposed to be in assessing the level of compliance. Definitely yes, like I've already stated, we come up with an annual audit plan. So, and when you're auditing, we really check, you know, your adherence to the principles. Great, is the tool available online? No, for now it's an Excel sheet. Please share with us this tool. Definitely we'll share it with registered, the DPOs that you just provided within your registration. And so this is the benefit of having a DPO, because if you don't have one, it really be hard for us to even advise and show you how you will comply with the areas and ensure you implement them. So after the online registration process is complete, how long does PDPO take to respond to us if we've been registered or not? Ideally, this takes 2 weeks, but in the past, you know, some people have taken a bit longer because we are migrating to an online environment. But ideally, this is within 2 to 3 weeks. And then let me add, if you've submitted and you do not have a certificate of registration, please do not consider yourself registered. Then what is the formal mechanism to relay complaints of data breaches to the office? Angela, over to you about Deo's question.
Thank you, Becca. So there is Form 7 that you fill in, and you'll find that on our website. And then you can send the notification or the report to breach report at pdpo.go.ug. We're in the process of automating this process, but for now, you fill in the form 7 manually, and then you send it as an email to pdpo.go.cg. Okay, and the next question is, will the tool be shared with other attendees besides those who have registered? We will, after completion of this tool, we'll actually upload it online so that you're able to just download it online on your own. But for now, we'll only share to those that registered for this webinar, whose email addresses we have. And then, let me see. Share the presentation, that's already answered. And there's a question on a request the board to permit the internal audit team to highlight the high-risk audit observations. Samuel, I'm not sure what you meant here, but you can just give clarification on that. And then when are we supposed to submit the annual reports? Is it at the anniversary of the organization's registration with the office? The annual report is submitted financial year for government, which ends in June. So you should have submitted that 3 months earlier. So it's irrespective of when you register with the office, because we assume you already have complaints, you've probably had personal data breach notifications and all those things. So it's irrespective of when you register with the office. Is the PDPO developing a template for receiving or recording client complaints, or the organization may develop its own? Now, there's 3 forms that clients use or data subjects use to raise complaints to you as an organization, as a data processor or controller. Now, those are in a particular format. When it comes to the internal recording of how you record those complaints, then you develop your own mechanism of how you record those complaints. But the fields that are in the forms that the client or the data subject has submitted should make part of the fields that you have in your own system or templates that you are using. Is it possible to invite people for an in-house staff training on personal data protection? Yes, this is possible. Only that currently we are very understaffed, so we may not be able to respond to you as fast as we'd like to, but we encourage you to actually attend these webinars and then go ahead and do training for your own staff, or even source for training if you have a budget for that staff. But if you need to, the procedure is you actually just send us an email, info@pdpo.go.ug, for us to be aware. But we are currently very few in the office, so this may not be possible for all organizations that want in-house staff training. Okay. And then the other question, after the online registration process is complete, how long does PDPO respond to us if we've been registered or not? Start to finish is 2 weeks, that's 10 working days. But if there is back and forth from us to the entity, this could take longer. Or if there's no back and forth, this could also take shorter. So every time we request for information or more information, it depends on how fast you respond to those requests. That makes the registration process faster or slower. So standard time is 10 working days for this to be complete if if all factors are constant. Okay, so Ronald, okay, yeah, Ronald is available and qualified to join the team. Ronald, that is noted. And then could you expound on data protection impact assessment and data protection privacy audits in the compliance reports? Becca, did you have this in the compliance reports?
Yes, I did, Angela.
Oh, yes, could you please just expound on it in 1 or 2 minutes?
Okay, a data protection impact assessment. It is really a process, that you conduct to inform, to check which risks may result from the processing you intend to do. An audit is just to establish your level of compliance. So those two are different.
Okay. And then on the submission, is that 3 months earlier or before or after? It's 3 months earlier.
No, and the 3 months earlier is for renewal of registration, your anniversary, but the 3 months after is for submission of the report. So to avoid the confusion, just know the annual compliance report is supposed to be submitted between July and September. Take it that way of any year, regardless of when you were registered. That is the period within which you should have submitted the report.
Rebecca, and then can an institution have more than one DPO? We encourage you to have one DPO and have a committee to help to work with the data protection officer. So the data protection officer does not have to do all the work themselves. You could have a working committee that is made up of other resources from other departments that report to the DPO to make the workload easier. Okay, then okay, so we said submission of report. It does not matter when you're registered. You actually submit the report 3 months after the end of the financial year, government financial year. Okay, can you share the data subject complaints form to guide us on how to create our own? So Laura, I'd encourage you to visit our website, go.ug and go to resources. Under the resources tab, you'll be able to find the 3 forms on the resources tab for you to be able to respond. In the event that you're unable to, just send an email at info@pdpo.go.ug. We'll be able to share this with you gladly. Okay, how do we get a certificate of registration and when? If you registered online using our online portal, you will get a notification that your certificate of registration is ready, and it will be downloadable from your account as an organization. If you registered offline or just submitting PDFs via email or via the OriginFirst portal, then you will have to come to our offices to pick the certificate of registration. That is if you've been informed that the certificate is ready. Okay, so I think that marks the end of our questions. I'm just trying to check through the chats. Okay, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That marks the end of our webinar today. Remember to follow us on Twitter, PDPOUG, and LinkedIn, Personal Data Protection Office, brackets PDPO. So we'd like to wish you a great day. Becca, if you could make your parting shots at this point.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you everyone who made time to stay on the call for the past 58 minutes. We hope you'll go beyond the registration and implement these processes, that when we come in to do the audit, we'll find you at least fully compliant, and of course, increasing the trust of the people whose information you collect. A great day to you all.
Okay, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We will be sharing some of the resources via the emails that you have registered with us. And we'll also be sure to send you the notice for our next webinar next month via the same email addresses that you shared with us. For now, have a great day and take care of yourselves. We'll see you next month. God bless.